So Nasik began on yesterday with this portion, the utilization of the power of language, and this was the starting point. And like Nasik, I'm getting more and more every day to realize and appreciate the power of language as it relates to our overall reality within the confines of this physical world, within this false simulated mind matrix. And this is exactly what it is. Now, see, this is
Yes, it is.
exactly what it is. It's no more and no less than that. And again, yesterday, Nasik did a great job in really starting us from a very fundamental standpoint and laying this thing out point by point. And it caused me to see even further into this thing and even in a more expansive way. And I'm sure that this was the goal when Nasik began to develop this. We talked about it, and I got although Nasik it was not articulated as such, uh, I could sense where you were going where you were going with this because I was headed in the same direction at the same time.
Right.
So the title, the utilization of the power of language, is so emblematic of how important this language, and again, not language Nasik as we traditionally understand it, although that's
Right.
a part of it. That's a part of it. It is it is a bottoms up part of this whole equation because everything within this matrix is language, but
Yes.
the basic language is in, and we need to really keep this in the forefront of our awareness, is mathematics, numbers, and symbols.
Yeah.
Numbers and symbols, and particularly geometric symbols, shapes, triangles, squares, circles, etc. Getting a little feedback. And this is going to be central to our comprehension of this. And Nasik, I believe that this is the key to everything. It's the key to everything. When we look,
Absolutely.
when we look, as Nasik and I were talking about in the beginning, when you look at this uh, figure here in the center with the flower of life represented or depicted within the circle, you can trace what we have come to know as the Kabbalistic tree of life. These one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 uh, designations or sephirot uh, on the Kabbalistic tree of life. There's actually an 11th that is not shown called Da'ath, but we'll just deal with these as we begin. And I'm going to, as briefly as possible, lead Nasik into what it is that, he's going to continue to expound upon relative to the utilization of the power of language. When you look at I just want to show you all these 3 points here. The top, this little triangle of circles. The top, we're going to, for the purpose of what I'm going to point out today, the top, Nasi, represents unity or wholeness. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the two to the left and the right of the top, forming the base of the triangle, um, represent the mother and the father, uh,
Uh-huh.
symbolically. The mother, the
Right.
father, and masculine and feminine to the left, uh,
And right.
uh, and the right. All right.
Yes.
So I want to talk about as we get into this language. Uh, this, or I'll just say this: that this tree of life, when we talk about the tree of life, it represents the human bodies, plural, that we possess and that we have possessed. All right. It represents the human bodies that are incorporated, now see, in this one body, physical body that we're walking around in and using to talk and to see and to sense right now.
Right.
So this was a representation of it energetically, physically, chemically, uh, anything, whatever element of reality that we can name, and I'm not going to try to name them all, it represents the full spectrum of that. The energetic body, spiritual, mental, emotional, chemical. It was supposed to be a representation of this. So there's not just one meaning to any of this, it's multiple meanings. All
That's
right.
correct. That's
So
correct.
we're just going to point out one for the purposes of what uh, we're talking about today. So these are the mother and the father, and they represent, now see, also our emanation from divinity into the physical realms.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we were at one point, family, one. We were both sexes within one body.
Yeah.
Had an androgynous form. We
Mm-hmm.
had an androgynous form. Now, this gets me into see, we have to keep these things in mind because we have a tendency to think that the body that we represent now, that we are in now, and the form that we are in now was always our form. No,
Right.
this we are at we are at the lowest form of representation. Now, see, split, divided, and divided within ourselves.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Divided within ourselves as well. We are totally divided at this point. And this is what Nasik is talking about why we can't get together in relationships, socially, culturally, until what? This internal union of these divided elements is accomplished. Is everyone with me?
That's correct. That's correct.
So yeah, we have to have a top down, now see, and a bottom up view of
And about
perspective of this. So let's talk about this mother and father. This is something, Nasik, that I just saw that is important that I'm going to point out.
go ahead.
When we look at the Genesis, the second chapter, 24th verse. Therefore
Leave.
shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Now,
Mhm.
we were one flesh, Nasik, before the separation of
There you go.
the masculine and feminine energies. The masculine feminine energies, before the separation of the masculine feminine energies, and the corresponding separation of man of the divinity into men and women. All right,
Right.
into
Hmm.
separate, divided representations in the flesh. And this is evident when you look at the Hebrew. This term, one flesh, echad lebasar, echad lebasar. That's how you say it, one flesh,
Yeah.
and it means one pudina, Nasik, meaning one sex. We were one sex at one time.
Absolutely, Eitai.
And
Yeah.
this is always it through the devolution, through the descent. This has been problematic to continue, Nasik, and maintain that bond, that energetic bond, as we devolved, as we failed, as we descended into further and further uh, uh, elements and areas of separation. To we've arrived where we are now, that we are totally divided, totally
Totally divine.
divided internally, and there's really no external, as we're going to see, and apparently externally. But the ultimate reality, Nasig, is that the division is internal, because all things are internal.
Knock on.
So we have these other scriptures that indicated, can two walk together except they be agreed, except they be
Right.
joined. And then in Genesis 11, where it talks about at one time, now see, we were all energetically bound,
Right.
you know, apparently, socially, culturally. And we all had this one language. And again,
Yeah.
we're not talking about Hebrew, we're not talking about French, we're not talking about English or none of them. Those things came later.
Let's say the capacity to interact, you know, harmoniously.
And holistically,
Harmoniously. Yeah.
our life experience was echad. It was one. It was united, because
Yes.
these energies, Nasi, were still somewhat bound together.
Yeah.
But later on in Genesis 11, everything was divided, and this division and separation of the language, which is the essence of all things, this energetic energy that is expressed in the physical in terms of numbers and geometry, that it was separated. And during the descent, it went through further and further and more severe separation, division, diversity,
Yeah.
until we find ourselves where we are at this moment. But this moment is not our beginning. It is just
No.
a beginning.
Yes. Right.
So, having said all that, uh, Nasik, if you could read that portion again from biocentrism, and uh, I want to get to that portion where it talks about imaging, you know, in the back of the brain, in the back of the head. All right,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna connect this portion, and then I mean, you're gonna go after that.
Okay. We're reading from Biocentrism, page 37, and I'm gonna pick up here. So, some may imagine that there are two worlds, one out there, quote end quote, and separate. One being cognized inside the skull, but the quote two worlds end quote model is a myth. Nothing is perceived except the perception themselves, and nothing exists outside consciousness. One, only one visual reality is extant, and there it is, right there. The quote outside world, end of quote, is therefore located within the brain or mind. Of course, this is astounding. Hold on 1 minute. I may have went too far.
No, no,
I
you're
did.
good. You're good, Nasi. You're absolutely perfect.
Oh, okay then.
You're good. You're good.
All right, okay. Astounding. Even it is obvious to them who study the brain that it becomes possible to overthink the issue and come up with attempt to refutation. Yea, but what about someone born blind? And what about touch? If things are not out there, how can we feel them? None of that changes the reality. Touch, too, of course, only within conscious or the mind. Every aspect of the butter, its existence on every level, is not outside of one's being. The real mind twister to all this, and the reason some are lowest to accept what should be patently obvious, is that its implication destroys the entire house of cards worldview that we have embraced all of our lives.
Now, right there, Nasi, and see that worldview. If we're going to rise and we're going to ascend to the uttermost possible attainable regions of consciousness, we got to get rid of this worldview that views things as external to us.
You're absolutely right.
Nasik read that nothing is perceived except perception itself. We're going to break
Yes.
this down and show you how you do this from a physiological standpoint. We're going to show you, he mentioned, Nasik, that it's in the head, in the brain, in the skull.
Right, right.
There are no two worlds, one external and one internal. It is all internal, family, all internal. And we're going to show you just how decode this. Nasik was talking about the importance within this physical uh, matrix, mind matrix, the importance of sensory perception, correct?
Yes, yes.
The importance of the senses. Now, however, Yeshua and the prophet Isaiah was talking about the fact that they got sense organs, but they can't, they're not really using them. They got eyes, but they really
Right,
can't see.
right.
They got ears, but can't hear.
Right.
So it can't be just talking about the physical sense organs, and it's not. It's talking about Nasi seeing and hearing and understanding through your consciousness.
You're 100% right.
Not no mind, not no brain. The brain is there just to convince you of the physicality of this illusion, of this matrix. It fools you, Nasik, and deceives you into thinking that it's real. That doesn't mean it's evil or that it's bad. That just means that that's what it does.
Yes, yes.
So nothing is perceived except perception itself. We're going to break this down. I had mentioned this yesterday, and I couldn't think of the proper term. I was saying parietal bones or whatever I was saying, but
Right.
it's actually the parietal lobes. And if you're taking notes, write that down. That's PARIETAL LOBES, parietal lobes. See, everything is dualistic. Everything is dualistic within the uh, physical mind matrix. Now, see,
Everything,
but
everything.
the ultimate reality is not duality. It's not
Not
separation. It's not division.
right, right.
The ultimate reality, always and constantly, is holism, singularity.
Yes, yes.
It never went anywhere. It was our perception that became dual.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, right there. Let that sink in because that has to be understand. Key pivotal point here. Got to get this here. Once you get this, you can go. But if you don't get this, you're gonna continue to miss it. Listen carefully.
Stop. Now, see, you're going to continue to stall out
Right.
because the accepted worldview of an external reality is going to continually block you.
Absolutely.
And guess who's creating that? You.
You.
So we're going to get down to the flesh and blood of this family and show you where this is created, where this dualistic mind matrix, this illusion of an external world is created. The
Huh.
parietal, and I'll read this article on the parietal lobes. The parietal lobes can be divided into two functional regions. Why, of course, because everything is dualistic in
Right.
the physical matrix, in this false physical matrix. The parietal lobes can be divided into two functional regions. One involves sensation. Stop. It involves the senses. Follow me now. And perception.
And perception.
It involves the senses and perception. This is what Nasik has been laying out for us. But we're going to show you from a physiological standpoint how this thing is matrixed, how we decode reality, and why it's decoded dualistically, inwardly and outwardly,
Yeah.
internally and externally, intrinsically and extrinsically. These are the terms that Nasik has been giving us. The one involves sensation and perception. The other is concerned with integrating, listen, sensory input primarily with the visual system. This is why you see things. Now see, you say, hand me the butter over there. The butter ain't over there. The butter, you just imagining that something called butter is over there to your right.
Right, this is phenomenal here.
The second function constructs a spatial coordinate system. Stop. Nasik talked to us yesterday about what term? Coordination.
Yeah,
Coordination, did he not?
yeah, yeah.
And coordination, and Nasik, I did not I didn't. I was processing all this. I wanted you to just keep going. Didn't want to um, interrupt, but all of this stuff was, began to germinate as you were doing this. This word coordination means orderly combination. Uh, to set in order, to arrange. Now, in terms of the Genesis, when the so-called creator, God of the Genesis, said, "Let there be light," that word is or, and we get the
Oh,
word
right.
order, coordinate, coordination. It is this visible light matrix. It's this visible light matrix. Listen, family. Let me show you something. Everything is sound and light. Everything. Ain't no butter. That's just sound and light. Everything is either sound or light. That is Nasik. That is formulated by these particular numbers and geometric shapes, geometric
Danny.
forms. And you view those things as real when they're just vibrations. Vibrations of sound, vibrations of light, and how those two things interact. Is everyone with me? That is the language of the universe. That is the language of reality. Nothing more, nothing less, family. It don't get no more complicated than this.
No, I don't.
But once we have a proper conception of this, everything becomes clear. All things, Nasi, are visible to us,
Candy,
are
can.
discernible to us from the standpoint of holism. From the standpoint of holism. That's the truth, family. From the standpoint of the truth. So these two lobes, the first function integrates sensory information to form a single perception, cognition. So we all, family, have this single perception of the physical universe, correct?
Yes, yes.
But it's just that's just our equipment. That's just our equipment that is decoding this language. Nasik, that is illusory.
Can.
The second function constructs a spatial coordinate system. Look, that is the room that we're in, the house that we're in, the street that we're on, the world that we inhabit. That is made up of what? Spatial coordinates, height, width, depth. Come on.
Right.
Listen, to represent the world that is so called around us. But it's not around us, it's in us. That is the that is the only perception that is real. That is the truth. I hope we're getting this, family. I hope we're getting this because this is going to help us understand all things
Can.
and work our way out of this. This is a little game, now. See,
Yeah.
individuals, listen, with damage to the parietal lobes often show striking deficits. such as abnormalities in body image and spatial relations. Damage to the left parietal lobe can result in what is called Gertzmann syndrome. It includes right and left confusion. Confusion, family, between, you don't know, confusion between your right hand and your left hand, what is on the right and what, how can you confuse that because of an injury to a part of your brain? I thought right was right and left was left. But when your perception mechanism, the thing that is incorporating space, Nasik, coordinating space, coordinating light, coordinating sound, when it is damaged, your whole world, the whole universe becomes difficult to navigate through. Are y'all hearing
Yes,
this?
yes, yes, yes.
It's a reason for that. Damage to the left parietal lobes can result in what's called Gertzmann syndrome. It includes right-left confusion, difficulty with writing, stop, difficulty with representing the symbols that represent, Nasik, the geometric forms, the geometric forms and shapes that make up this entire false matrix. Are you all with me?
Eitai, I'm with you.
It's called
Okay.
agraphia. See, in the beginning was the word. And the word, that's this language that we're talking about. The word was God and the word was with God. All things were made by this word, by this language. But it wasn't Hebrew. It wasn't French. It wasn't Sanskrit. Those are later developments, now see?
Talk to us. Talk to us.
Look, and difficulty with mathematics, a calculia. Look, let's go. Because I'm going to lead Nasik in with this. This language, family, the universe cannot be read until we have learned the language. We're learning the language, Nasik.
Yes, we are.
We're learning the language, family, and we're beginning to read this universe. Just like one would read a book, a children's book. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. The universe cannot be read until we have learned the language and become familiar with the characters in which it is written. It is written, family, in a mathematical language. That is why when you have trauma to this particular area, Nasik, you have difficulty with mathematics.
Yes.
You have difficulty with knowing your right hand from your left hand because that disappears once you stop matrixing it and you start acting crazy, but you're not really acting crazy, you're acting divine. You are acting divine because you don't have this mechanism that is what? Breaking things into particular parts, spaces. Divinity doesn't see that, Nasik. It sees things holistically. But,
Yes, it does.
but in order for you to operate down here, in order for you to operate down here, and in order for us to have some type of agreement and coordination, Nasik, within the physical, we need that. It is written in mathematical language, and the letters are triangles, circles, and other geometric figures. Those are the things that make up what we call the physical material universe, are they not?
Absolutely.
Without which means it is humanly impossible to comprehend a single word. Without these, one is wandering about in a dark labyrinth. And the individuals that are not privy to this information that we are sharing before you today, they're walking around in the dark as blind men and blind women. They think that they can see, but they can't see. They're only perceiving perception.
That's all they're doing.
That's all
Perceiving,
they're doing. That's all they're doing. They're living uh, in two worlds, Nasik, in two worlds, but there's only one. It can also produce disorders of language. I'm gonna stop right there. It can also produce disorders of language, what they call aphasia, and the inability to perceive objects normally. Agnosia. Agnosia. If that doesn't say it, family, I don't know how, if that doesn't say it clearly, I don't know how else to show you. It is a structure within us that causes us to view an internal world as external. Once that thing is damaged, now see that whole plan
yeah.
is set at naught. That whole plan is ruined. So the true nature of reality, family, is holistic. We must begin to see and perceive holistically, to think holistically. And we got this thing figured out now, see?
Yes,
We
yes,
got
yes.
this thing figured out. I don't have to hit myself in the head in the, with a hammer and damage the parietal lobe. I just gotta realize what it's doing
Yeah.
and the illusion that it is producing, the deception that it is producing. When I know that this thing is basically light and sound, man, I can start saying the right words in the right way, saying the right notes in the right way, putting out the right tones, family, in the right way, and then viewing this thing in terms of energy. So, with that, Nasi, you go right ahead.
Okay. Family wholeness, and as usual, it never ceased to amaze me of the profundity of the ancient ancestors,
Yes.
how they have laid this out. Absolutely, we cannot give no credit at all to the European. If we do, it means that something is very, 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 very much wrong with us in our perception and understanding. And I think this is what Eitai just got to.
Absolutely.
And with
or
that,
to one or to one source,
yes,
or to one source, or to
right,
one source, because most people like to rely on facts, 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 but it doesn't come like that.
yeah. So what we're going to do, as Eitai was really magnifying that, let me just brief overview, you
Uh-huh.
know, review, brief review, not an overview, but review of yesterday. How we got to that started with the very first point I brought out about the utilization of power of language. And it was where we stated to say, we must begin with the true understanding of the power of language and its capability of what it is able to make you perceive through the sense organ. That's how
Yeah.
it got started. Language is used not only to communicate with others, it is also a symbol that is used to cause us to look at people and things to divide nature into parts and action.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
That's how we got there yesterday, family. And when I used the word divide, I said, now you're talking about dimensions. And this is how we got to the word coordinate.
That's right.
It's a verb form, 14th century. The etymology means to measure out. And number one was to measure in one direction, specifically one of three coordinates determining a position in space, of four coordinates determine a position in space and time.
Yes.
Space, and this is how we got there yesterday. So
Right.
Eitai picked it up and he what? Brought today and magnified it so that we should be pretty clear now of the power of language again. And he's given us, you know, a great insight to what the true language is and how it is used to read the universe. To read the universe. Now listen to this. I'm gonna go back to biocentrism because we're talking about reading the universe.
Yes.
Now I want to go to page 13 in biocentrism, and we're going to begin here. Listen carefully. He said, our science of today has failed to recognize those special properties of life that make it fundamental to material reality. That's what he was explaining now.
That's right.
This view of the world in which life and consciousness are the bottom line in understanding the larger universe. Now, you know, he's talking about you as a universe.
That's
In
right.
the large extended universe, life and consciousness is fundamental. Okay? Biocentrism revolves around the way a subjective experience, which we call consciousness. A subjective experience is what we'll call consciousness, relates to a physical process. Isn't that what he just got to explaining?
That's right. That's right.
It says, it is a vast mystery that I have pursued my entire life with a lot of help along the way, standing on the shoulders of some of the greatest and most lauded minds of the modern age. I have also come to conclusion that would shock the conventions of my predecessors, placing biology above the other sciences in an attempt to find the theory of everything,
There we go.
or what they call TOE, T-O-E. That has evaded other disciplines. It has evaded other disciplines. He said, some of the thrill that came with the announcement that the human genome had been mapped, or the idea that we are close to understanding the first, second of time after the Big Bang, rests in our innate human desire for completeness and totality. But most of these comprehensive theories fail to take into account the crucial factor: we are creating them. It is the biological creature that fashions the stories that make the observance and that gives names to them, and therein lies the great expanse of our oversight, that science has not confronted the one thing that is at once most familiar and most mysterious.
That's right.
Is awareness. Conscious awareness. Now, hold on. We're going to go to page 23 just for a moment. Okay, page 23. And we're going to pick up what is referred to. Here it says, we're talking now about how the brain and the eye coordination is so vital to understanding. Now, brain and eye. What you say they have eyes and what?
Can't
See not, right? Listen now, it says, then too, if the sunlight droplets are very nearby, as from a lawn sprinkler, the person nearby may not see a rainbow at all. Your rainbow is yours alone. Now remember, Eitai, you remember you talking about you saw the light?
Absolutely.
And Mark Hill talking about he saw the rainbow.
That's right.
And the boy
That's right.
saw the rainbow. Now listen now. He said, but now we get into our point. What if no one's there? Question. Answer. No rainbow.
That's right.
If no one's there, no rainbow. An eye brain system or to surrogate a camera whose results will only be viewed later by a conscious observer.
That's right.
Must be present to complete the geometry. To complete the geometry. As real as the rainbow looks, it requires your presence just as much as it requires sun and rain. Now, that's simply saying that you cannot separate yourself from nothing.
That's right.
And say, in the absence of anyone or any animal, it is easy to see that no rainbow is present. Or if you prefer, there are countless trillions of potential bows, each one blurtly offset from the next by the minute margin. None of this is speculative or philosophical. It is the basic science that would be encountered in any grade school earth science class.
That's
going to stop. And he goes on to give an explanation of what he called the first principle of biocentrism. And it is what we perceive as reality is a process that involves our consciousness.
That's right.
Okay. Now, as we continue on, what we're going to do now, we're going to look at how important consciousness is. See, because, we continue to define consciousness in a very narrow perspective. And this narrow perspective is basically what, we've gotten from the dictionary. But if it's just awareness, like they have given us, what has consciousness got to do with you understand, seeing the rainbow and don't understand that you understand, connection to the rainbow, it's not outside of you, it's a reflection that comes from you. So you tell me about consciousness, just ain't no awareness like that.
Right.
Follow me?
Right.
So continue on. Now, this brings me to this part as to why we cannot solve no problems. We having serious problems, serious challenges trying to solve our problems that we are faced with. These problems exist from our, descent, our devolution and fall into this, false, mind matrix. And as a result of the problems of duality or dualism has created for us trying to see things in a unified way has been very, very problematic.
That's
And
correct.
I want you to follow this now. We're reading here now from RJPJ, page 23. And this is the quote taken from the Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra. And in that book is page 325, 326. And listen carefully here, because we're going to bring out the significance of this consciousness again and why we are not able to solve our problem. Okay, here we go. They said the major problems of our time cannot be understood in isolation. Now, tell me, how are you going to solve anything that you understand, do not understand? And then the second element of it, that you are isolated from what you don't understand. How you going to solve a problem?
Never gonna happen.
It's never going to happen. I'm going to read that again.
Impossible.
What we saying here now, the major problems of our time cannot be understood in isolation. So if you do not understand them, it's because you are isolated from the problem.
Yes.
And if you are isolated from the problem, you don't even know that there is a problem. And since there is no consciousness of there is a problem, you go on every day, being confronted by the very problem that you are not aware of, that what continues to cause conflict, controversy. And you trying to figure out, well, why so-and-so act the way they act? Why she do? Why you do this daily? We do this daily.
Right.
Now he goes on to say, so if you isolated, that means you are separated. That means you are divided, and you're not united.
That's right.
So this is why we keep talking about division. We keep talking about division and wholeness, division and wholeness, division and wholeness, separation and wholeness. This becomes the key. These are the conceptual two worlds, wholeness and dualism. Right. The two worlds that you are conceiving, and you don't know which one is correct, which one you want to live in, or which one you understand that really exists. This is how confused we are. Continuing on, he said they are systemic problems, interconnected and interdependent. Now we hadn't heard that like we should be hearing today. The problems are interconnected and interdependent because they are systemic.
Right.
Now, and we went on.
Nasik,
go ahead.
The only constant reality is wholeness.
Yes, it's wholeness.
That's it.
Wholeness.
Right.
So listen now, systemic, so you can understand. It's an adjective. It was 1803 coined. And again, you hear me keep using these dates because what I'm trying to do with these dates, make you understand when these things was established, so you can get out of the thought process and the worldview of millions of years ago and all of that. This has just happened, in recent time within the matrix that we disseminated, devolved, into this false mind matrix. So here now, when we look at the number, the date 1803, common era, it says of, relating to, are common to a system as affecting the body generally. B, supplying those parts of the body that receives blood through the aorta rather than through the pulmonary. So the aorta is the heart.
Aorta, Slika. Aorta.
Aorta, you're right.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Rather than through the pulmonary, which is the the lungs, okay, artery, acting through the bodily system after absorption or ingestion to make the organism toxic to a pest as a mite, something small, or insect. So now you're talking about the organism being made toxic. And because what? This reception of blood through the aorta rather than through the pulmonary artery. Now, here we go now, affecting the body generally. Now, this is as a result of, isolation, division, separation. It has a profound effect upon this particular system because the system now is not functioning as a holistic system. It's been functioning now. It's been disrupted, so to speak.
Right.
Now, disruption. Here's what happened in the disruption. It makes things, disconnected when it should be interconnected.
That's right.
Okay. So in the disconnection, you lose access to all things. But when you're interconnected, you are what? Accessing all things. So as Eitai was explaining, as to how, the whole function of the sensory organs, they have eyes and they see now, ears and they hear now. We see they have been altered. They are not functioning according to holism. They are functioning according to dualism. All right? Trying to comprehend and understand unity and harmony, oneness, when there is no way to do it in division and separation. Are you hearing me now?
I hear you, Nasik.
Continuing on. So, but the new paradigm that is now emerging can be described in various ways. It can be called a holistic worldview, seeing the world as an integrated whole rather than a disassociated collection of parts. You see, this is what isolation does. This is what division does. You start to see, now we just got through reading in biocentrism about the two worlds.
That's right.
That's how you are seeing it.
Right.
Because of disassociation. And I want to stop here for a moment because we had some very vital comments yesterday as we was closing out about our inability to interact with certain members. I want us to go back there because it's vital so that we can understand we got to stop blaming somebody else and start looking at ourselves. If we don't do that, you're going to keep blaming somebody else for not being at a level that they should be. But we got to acknowledge if you blaming somebody else, you're not where you're supposed to be. Now, that's a reality, family.
Okay.
And we keep talking about this realm of consciousness starting at 20, and we what? As we ascend the ladder of consciousness, we're talking about 200 being a vital, you understand, point that we should be, because that is only when things begin to function in what we would call a positive, return or positive. And then we went on to say, it is important to get to that 250.
Right.
And then we say we got to get now to that area of neutrality.
That's right.
You don't get there, you're going to continue to blame people for what problem, but you got the same problem they got. You got whether we want to admit it or not, you got the same problem, the same identical problem. But it's hard to see because the division and isolation and separation can cause you to lose contact with the ability to see comprehend and understand and solve those problems. Continuing on, it says, it can also be called an ecological view if the term ecological is used in a much broader and deeper sense that is commonly used. This broader and deeper sense of ecological is known as deep ecology. So you got deep ecology, and the opposite of deep ecology, we know, would be shallow ecology.
That's right.
So let's look at shallow ecology. You know, the deeper sense or the greater way of looking at it, or the more broader way, or more correct way should be deep ecology. Looking at it, you know, from its full perspective, the depths of it. But shallow ecology, you're messing around on the surface. You're not getting to the depths of it. You're not getting to the fullness of it. Shallow ecology is anthropocentric. It views human as above or outside of nature, as the source of all value, and ascribes only use value to nature. Now, okay, this says it views human. So now you see physicality now. This physical element, you know, is what viewed as having all value. And that which you understand is considered to be nature, you know, nature is not, you understand, dualistic. Nature is holistic. You follow me?
Right.
And so looking at it from a dualistic point of view, you're looking at it from an isolated, a separated, a diversified point of view. And when you do that, you must look at physicality as having all value. Physicality as having all value.
Right. That's right.
Anything else with less to no value. Okay? Continuing on. Shallow ecology, the anthropocentric, views human as above or outside of nature, as the source of all value, and ascribes only use value to nature. Deep ecology does not separate humans from the natural environment, nor does it separate anything else from it. So if you're talking about deep ecology, you're talking about holism.
Right.
All right? So shallow ecology, you're talking about dualism. You got to hear us now. Ultimately, such deep ecological awareness is spiritual awareness. When the concept of the human spirit is understood as the mode of consciousness, now this is what we're going to come back to, the mode of consciousness in which the individual feels connected to the cosmos as a whole, it becomes clear that ecological awareness is spiritual in its deepest essence. And it is then not surprising that the new vision of reality is in harmony with the vision of spiritual tradition. So now, let's go back to this word, mode of consciousness that locks you into the universe as a whole. Now, let's go back to the power versus force. Now we're going to see something very significant here. Power versus force. Now, when we see that wholeness connects you to all things, you are then connected to the cosmos. That's the realm of consciousness of wholeness. That you have to enter into that realm or the mode of consciousness, which the individual feels connected. So what portion is that? What realm of consciousness could we say, we're going to show you where that realm of consciousness is, that will allow you to what? See yourself being connected. Now, let's start, we're going to start with energy level 20. Energy level 20. Now listen carefully. Okay? Energy level 20.
Now, see, excuse me, what page are you reading from in Power versus Force? I can show it up on the screen. So,
This is page 76 in my book. It's in the portion where It's called Levels of Human Consciousness, chapter 4.
Okay, okay. Let me get to that. And
Chapter 4, Levels of Human Consciousness.
okay, bear with me, family.
Take your time, take your time.
What page was that, Nasik? Did you had set 54?
No, it's in chapter 4, Levels of Human Consciousness. In my book, it's page 76, where I'm going to start reading.
Okay.
All right.
You starting at energy level 20, right?
Right, right.
Okay, we got it.
Now, we're going to read up to, Eitai, if you could read from it, read up to where it says to life.
All right. Reading from Power versus Force, fourth chapter, Levels of Human Consciousness. Energy level 20, shame. The level of shame is perilously proximate to death. I got to read that again. The level of shame is perilously proximate to death.
And that's what we got. Stop there, Eitai, right there.
Right.
Now, an individual that's energetically or spiritually dead, he is not aware of anything, you understand, beyond his physical being.
That's right.
Energetically, he's not, you understand, connected to anything. Because we're trying to point out now what level that you got to get to in order to feel connected to the cosmos. You know, that's the key point now, because then you begin to what? Access all things. Continue, Eitai.
The level of shame is perilously proximate to death, which may be chosen out of shame as a conscious suicide or more
As a conscious suicide,
or more subtly elected by failure to take steps to prolong life. That's profound.
I said stop. I want to read just a little further. I'll tell you when
All
to
right.
stop.
All right. Death by avoidable accident is common here. We all have some awareness of the pain of, quote, losing face, end quote, becoming discredited, a non-person. In shame, we hang our heads and slink away, wishing we were invisible. Banishment is a traditional accompaniment of shame. And in the primitive societies from which we all originate, banishment is equivalent to death.
Now, one more point. Go ahead.
Early life experiences, such as sexual abuse, which lead to shame, warp the personality for a lifetime unless these issues are resolved by therapy. Shame, as Freud determined, produces neurosis. It is destructive to emotional and psychological health, and as a consequence of low self-esteem, makes one prone to development of physical illness.
That's it. So now we talk about this level. Now that no way that level there connects you to the universe, because the universe is directly connected to what? Consciousness and life. As the brother went on to say, he said how life and consciousness are the keys to understand the true nature of the universe.
That's correct.
And then one of the writers, stated, it said, biocentrism completes the shift in worldview as it takes on one of the key tenets of Western thinking, that all life ultimately reduces to physics. In its place, it offers the revolutionary view that biology is primary, that life creates the universe and not the other way around.
All right.
So you got to understand life created the universe, and consciousness and life is one and the same.
Right.
Okay. So now let's go to the next level. Guilt, 30. We're going to read up to where it said control. Guilt.
Guilt, energy level 30. Guilt, so commonly used in our society to manipulate and punish, manifests itself in a variety of expressions such as remorse, self recrimination, masochism, and the whole gamut of symptoms of victimhood. Unconscious guilt results in psychosomatic disease, accident proneness, and suicidal behaviors. Many people struggle with guilt their entire lives, while others desperately attempt escape by amorally denying guilt altogether. Guilt domination results in a preoccupation with sin. Wow. An unforgiving emotional attitude frequently exploited by religious demagogues who,
Uh-huh.
who use it for coercion and control.
Who use it for coercion and control. Continue on.
Such,
Such.
such
Mhm.
quote, sin and salvation, end quote, merchants obsessed with punishment are likely either acting out their own guilt or projecting it onto others.
Now, that's good. So here we find that at the level of 30, guilt, there's no way you can perceive yourself being connected to the universe. We point this out because we got to understand
Right.
what we just read here. It says that when the concept of the human spirit is understood as the mode of consciousness in which the individual feels connected to the cosmos as a whole, as a whole, it becomes clear that ecological awareness is spiritual in its deepest essence. So continue on, Eitai. We want to go now to the next one, which is 50, which is apathy.
Energy level 50, apathy.
We're
This
going to read up to the word available.
got you. This level is characterized by poverty, despair, and hopelessness. The world and the future look bleak. Pathos is the theme of life. It is a state of helplessness. Its victims, needy in every way, lack not only resources, but the energy to avail themselves of what may be available.
Okay. Now, let's go to the next level, which is grief, 75.
Energy
And we're
level
going
75. Oh, go
to read
ahead.
up, read up to health.
All right. Energy level 75, grief. This is the level of sadness, loss, and despondency. Most of us have experienced it for periods of time, but those who remain at this level live a life of constant regret and depression. This is the level of mourning, bereavement, and remorse about the past. It is also the level of habitual losers and those chronic gamblers who accept failure as part of their lifestyle, often resulting in loss of jobs, friends, family, and opportunity, as well as money and health.
So now we're going to 100. That is the fear.
Energy level 100, fear. At the level of 100, there is a lot more life energy available. Fear of danger is healthy. Fear runs much of the world, spurring on endless activity. Fear of enemies, fear of old age or death, fear of rejection, and a multitude of social fears are basic motivators in most people's lives.
Come on. Mm-hmm.
Viewpoint of this level, the world looks hazardous, full of traps and threats. Fear is the favorite official tool for control by oppressive totalitarian agencies, and insecurity is the stock and trade of major manipulators of the marketplace. The media and advertising play to fear to increase market share.
To increase market share. Now, we went to 100, and that's half of the way to 200. 200 is just you beginning to start to have some kind of, view, internal, and I'm going to use the word internal as opposed to external,
Right.
internal view of some kind of things happening in a way that is beneficial to you. That's a critical level.
That's right.
Level. But if you do not get beyond that, you don't have any access to, you understand, a awareness of you being connected to the cosmos as a whole. So you could not call yourself spiritual. You could not call yourself spiritual. So now what we're going to do now, take this point here, and we're going to use now a concept of polarization. Now, this is going to kind of like lock us in to where we want to go here with, we want to go to page 250. Yeah, not page 250, but energy level 250. It's new. Now, if you don't get to this level, you understand, it's going to be difficult to impossible as to what biocentrism and Robert Lanza have been explaining about any overarching, unity of consciousness is impossible based upon dualistic things. You're going to better understand that if you don't get to neutrality. Under neutrality 250, it's almost impossible for you to understand, fully what's taking place that is preventing you from being able to clearly see without struggling with what's being spoken of, you understand, on our best behalf online. Eitai,
Energy level 250, neutrality. Energy becomes very positive as we get to the level which we have termed neutral, because it is epitomized by release from the positionality which typifies lower levels.
And this is what we're talking about here. See, on the lower levels, you're going to take on a position of all them things, apathy, fear, shame. You're going to take them positions and you're going to polarize that position, because that's your level of consciousness. You're going to polarize that level of the position that you're functioning in. And when that happens, watch what happens now. Go ahead, Eitai.
Below 250, consciousness tends to see dichotomies and take on rigid positions, an impediment in a world which is complex and multifactorial rather than black and white.
You've been trying to understand things from good and evil, right and wrong, good and safe. And once you do that, you then have to see things as opposites.
That's right.
You cannot see things as being complementary and unified. Gotta hear us here. And this will give us, some insight of how to evaluate where we are so that we can stop blaming external beings as the problem.
That's right.
Continue, time.
Taking such positions creates polarization, and polarization in turn creates opposition and division.
Now, isn't that what we've been talking about?
Absolutely.
See, this is the problem. So, taking such positions, below 250, causes polarization, you know, opposition and division. Now you're trying to resolve problems that what you are isolated from, but you actually believe that the problem is caused by somebody else. I want us to hear this point because yesterday again, when we was closing out, we brought up some very significant points about being able to interact with one another. We got to what? Evaluate ourselves. Stop trying to evaluate someone else. We got to start with self. Okay? Continue.
As in the martial arts, a rigid position becomes a point of vulnerability. That which does not bend is liable to break. Rising above barriers or oppositions, which dissipates one's energies. The neutral condition allows for flexibility and non-judgmental, realistic appraisal of problems.
Now hold on.
Key point right there, Nasik.
This is key here. Now let's go back. It said rising above barriers or oppositions that dissipates one's energy. Now I don't want to think you talk about energy to get up and do something. You got to link energy to consciousness here.
Okay.
You know, you got to link energy to your consciousness because your consciousness is your life force that's telling you through your perception as to what's right, what's wrong, what's good, and what is not. And if you got a lower level of energy, vibration, you find yourself here always in opposition to life, opposition to everything.
Right.
You just don't bring it out, you know, until someone what comes with another perception. That's when it comes out. As long as you're on the same page, same, you know, same vibrational frequency, you can what? Work things out. But anything beyond the 200, you understand? You know, now you start to have problem with it. And this is very, very, now let's go back to, without us getting to the realm of neutrality, we cannot actually see that the problems that we have created, that we have what? Divided and separated and isolated ourselves from the problem.
That's right.
And once you have separated from the problem, you cannot perceive that you are the cause of the problem. You don't even see it's a problem, but you're still being influenced and affected by it. You just cannot see it. You just cannot. You may feel it, you know, somebody may tell you, you understand, but beyond that, it's nothing that you are able to do about it.
Okay.
Continue on, Eitai.
Rising above barriers or oppositions which dissipate one's energy. The neutral condition allows for flexibility and non-judgmental, realistic appraisal of problems. To be neutral means to be relatively unattached to outcomes. Relatively unattached to outcomes. Not getting one's way is no longer experienced as defeating, frightening, or frustrating. Very important there.
So here we go now. If you don't get to the level of neutrality, you are not flexible. You're not flexible. And flexibility causes you to be non-judgmental about the next person.
Right.
Allows you to have a realistic appraisal of the problem rather than blaming somebody. Rather than blaming somebody. You can realistically look at the problem and, you know, deal with it. So we want to now stop here and ask us any questions or any comments because.
Continue.
Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to move to an area called KRS, the fifth dimension explained. KRS, the fifth dimension explained. Many of you probably are familiar with KRS. The acronym KRS, it means, what it really means is knowledge reigns supreme. Okay? KRS, knowledge reigns supreme. Now, when we say knowledge reigns supreme, now, there's two forms of knowledge. We're talking about the artificial, intellect, and we're talking about the holistic, organic. Well, the knowledge, that has been reigning supreme has been the artificial intellect or knowledge of dualism. It is reigned supreme. It is the governor, and creator of all things in this physical realm. You follow me?
Right.
So now, but what we talk about when we say KRS reigning, knowledge reigns supreme, we talk about the knowledge of wholeness. That's the knowledge that reigns supreme over all knowledge. All right? You talk about supreme beings. You heard those terms. But the supreme being is the being that is what? Endowed with, and perpetuating, this supreme knowledge of wholeness. So let us get into KRS, fifth dimension explained. It's very important for us to understand about language again. And, we keep saying these things because we don't want this, to get away from what we're talking about. We got to understand the utilization of the power of language. We got to understand that. So let's look at it. We talked about our decline, our descent, our devolution, fall into the physical plane. In this devolution and this descent, this false matrix, there was a language that would be utilized within this language, in this matrix. And this language has been the language that has governed, and influenced all of humanity. So now let us consider within this here, this third dimension, as they would call it, we're going to explain it from this point of view. When you start talking about dimensions, three dimensions, you sometimes, you will hear width, length, and depth or something like that. You follow me?
Right.
But we're going to explain it from another way, which is going to give us a little bit more insight, The explanation of the third dimension. Left and right, or left to right, up and down, forward and back. I'll say it again. Left to right, up and down, forward and back. Now, plus time. So add time to that. Okay, that's 4 dimensions. Okay, so what happened to the 5th dimension? We got to ask ourselves, what happened to we got what? Left, right, up, down, forward, and back. Now, the 5th dimension is so profound, but nobody never talks about this dimension. And that dimension is in and out. Did y'all hear me? I said in and out.
Come on.
That's the 5th dimension. In and out. Now, listen, family. When you inhale and you exhale, that's the rhythm, isn't it?
That's correct.
I call it the rhythm of life.
That's
Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. So now you in this rhythm of what? 3 dimensions, you're talking about what? Left and right, up and down, forward and back, within a cycle of time. So you got 4 dimensions. But, everybody's stuck in the 3rd dimension. They don't even recognize the 4th dimension. There's no one talking about the 5th. And so now, if the 5th dimension is in and out, then we go back now and we ask ourselves about us emanating into the quote unquote third dimension,
There it is.
emanating into the third dimension. And this third dimension, you can see within time and space, you see what's happening, you know, you see what's going on. Now, let's just explain something. The first human being came here to Earth from inner space, not from outer space. This is the dimension that nobody talks about. In and out, in and out. Now, Eitai been talking to us about getting out of here, right?
That's right.
But we didn't know how we got in.
Wow.
In and out. Okay? So, you know, before there was a body, there was a voice. Hear me now. Before we had, quote unquote, a body, there was a voice. Now, this voice has been traveling in the dimensions, you understand, to get here to Earth. They've been traveling in the dimensions to get here to the Earth. All right? The inner voice created this outer extension of itself to be in this dimension. I say it again. The inner voice created this outer extension of itself to be in this dimension. Because we keep thinking that this physical body is actually who we are.
That's correct.
It is absolutely not who you are. Who you are is a voice. Now listen, now I want us to start practicing this. So Eitai been talking to us about words, right?
Right.
And he was talking about deciduals, how important deciduals was. Now we're going to move it to another level in terms of language now. See, we said language is multifactorial and not just black and white, up and down, right and wrong, good and evil, you know, for communication between people. Language is a profound concept.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now, listen to me now. There's a language that is what? Nonverbal. Now, he's been talking to us about that. So what I want us to do now is to start to what? Talk to ourselves by closing our eyes and not uttering a sound. Not uttering a sound. I want us to start saying whatever you want to be. Start to say that. And watch what takes place. Because it's the voice that, you understand, that is responding, you understand, causing the flesh, you understand, to do what it does. Okay? But you hear the voice as the literal voice, which involves your sense organ. But how is it that you can speak, you know, and a voice can make a sound, or can be activated and activate an energy without you hearing it? Without you hearing it. But the voice has spoken, but you didn't hear it. But we're getting into some high level things here now, but simple.
Yes.
Okay, simple. Going back again, the first human beings came here to Earth from inner space, not from outer space. Inner space, okay? Before there was a body, there was a voice traveling in this voice through this dimension to get here to the Earth. Inner voice created this outer extension of itself to be in this dimension. But you are also in another dimension. You now are free in this other dimension. But you are what? Captive in this physical dimension of 3 dimensions. Because whatever happened to you in this dimension is not your only reality. Whatever happened to you in this dimension is not yours. And Eitai have been talking to us about passing on. Hear me now. Once you realize that level of consciousness where you officially identify yourself as energy, identify yourself as energy, flesh, you are the inner voice and not your outer voice. Once you become the inner voice, not your outer voice, now it has power. The inner voice is where the power is, not the outer voice. I think Eitai was telling us a few days ago about making your voice heard on high, right, Eitai?
That's right. This is following along with that, Nasik. Absolute.
So now when you speak, it is not just a shell of a vehicle speaking. There is a being, an actual being within speaking through the shell or the vehicle. And this is where you heal all sickness in your body. This is where you command reality to work with you and for you through your consciousness. Why? Because it is not a shell / vehicle speaking. There's a real being in the shell or vehicle speaking. When the real being speaks, all nature and the universe responds. All nature and the universe responds
Absolute.
to that voice of that inner being. Now, that is to simply say that this voice of inner being is and this is what the universe where our universe responds. What we were just saying, we got to understand about the inner voice. Obviously, Lig used to teach us about the inner voice. He used to call it the inner man. And he would say that inner man is supposed to click. Something's supposed to click, So, but now we understand why it wasn't clicking in terms of producing and bringing forth the desired result, is because that voice had been silenced through, dualism. It had been silenced. The inner wholeness and unity and singularity that causes the universe to respond. So we want to stop here and ask us any questions on anything, questions or comments. So we're going to go to Leviticus 26th chapter, verses 7 and 8.
And causes all kind of.
Yeah. When you're reading those in Power versus Force, reading those levels, a person really has to stop. In order for you to understand those levels, you have to look at yourself and look at yourself realistically. Deep introspection and what caused, because if you look at those levels, you have to see yourself in those levels. You have to see yourself there. That's the real reason why we're in this world of dualism. Because we experience those levels. And the level I saw, I remember when I was a kid. I guess I was about,
it's 1 o'clock.
7 years old, 6, 7 years old. I used to wonder why I was so shy and introverted. I never put my finger on it. I guess I didn't want to. But I looked at it and I remember, like I said, you have to look at yourself, really go really deep within yourself. And sometimes you have to go beyond. But I learned the reason for my shyness and my introvertness, because that shame showed it to me. You showed it to me in that shame. I think it was shame or guilt. But it was, for me, it was wetting the bed. It caused me shame, great shame, because I had brothers that teased me about it. You see? That carried over into my life, even into now. Had to make myself see it, and that would realize it so that I can do something about it and move on to where I'm supposed to be in terms of the levels of neutrality and above. That's all I wanted to say. Toda. So I thank you for what you have presented today. You know,
So-
it helped me to see, understand me for who I am and what I should be.
So we can see back to the brilliance of the ancestors again. And, you know, we're going to touch up on it in the next day or so in terms of how, you know, what Eitai has been teaching us in respect to foreknowledge, you know, and how this foreknowledge was agreed upon in order for us to come into this condition. So the shame, you know, starting at the lowest level, you know, it's right above depth. And as we were saying, that little spark is in the genitalia of everybody. Other than that, the life force has completely dissipated, you know, as we fell deeper into, you know, this false matrix, you know. So we can see how consciousness, you know, plays, you know, saying a profound, profound role in us understanding it beyond just awareness. Because certainly we've been talking about consciousness, but what was we aware of? The thing we talking about? We wasn't aware of the things we talking about.
Absolutely.
You know, so it couldn't just be awareness. Like, you know, consciousness has to become the creative force or creative power of the entire universe. You know, so it challenges us to let go of many of the things that, you know, we have been programmed to believe, and the effect that it's had on us has been very shameful, you know.
Yes.
Made us all feel guilty and whatever, you know. So, but at this point, I want to make a statement about this here, and this is good, Mario, you know, and Nazar, what you said. There was a documentary that I mentioned to you all about. It was about these brothers that was in prison, and they did this special on CNN on a Saturday afternoon, and I remember this statement. Our Kalai brought it up today. We were talking. The statement the brother made. He said, "People who are whole can speak about their fears without shame." Remember that. Remember this statement. I would advise us all to take note of this. Make a note of it. People who are whole can speak about their fears without shame.
That's right.
These brothers did a excellent job of explaining how this duality has put them in prison and what it had done to them, you know, and how they had blamed, you know, and the reason they was in jail, you know. Matter of fact, we're gonna see can we pull that up again, and I would advise everybody, you know, to take a look at it, because all of this is a part of an awakening process that's going on, and it, you know, it's on various levels with all of us.
Right. Right.
But again, I have to admit, the level that we're talking on, I don't think it's very many talking on this level. So we're going to quote something here, and then we're going to read a little point about it from Leviticus 26, verses 7 and 8, and then we're going to close out. We state, so we said, although the Bible is not our true history, now some of us have been taught and believe that it is also incorrect to use it as a historical book. It must be used as an allegorical narrative in order to gain the benefit of what it contained within it. Now, that's a very significant point. And why? Because I want to give you a definition of allegory so that you can understand. Allegory, to speak figuratively, okay? To speak publicly, okay? Now, definition one, the expression by means of symbolic, fictional figures. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses. These are symbolic, fictional figures. All right?
Yes.
Actions of truth. And actions of truth. These are fictional, figurative actions of truth or generalizations about human experience. Human experience. Also, an instant, an example they give as a story or painting. So these biblical stories, narratives, and various paintings is such an expression that it is what? Connected to fictional, symbolic figures, actions of truth, and generalizations about human experience. Symbolic representation of emblems. So we can understand what we're talking about when we say the Bible is not our true history. Because I want us to, those are kind of statements that get you in trouble with, the literalists, how they see things, based upon the dualism, got to see things from a physical plane, it ain't no other way. Quoting the two scripture verses we're using here. And you shall chase, your enemies, and they shall fall before you by the sword. Now, if you're going to chase an enemy, and the enemy is going to fall before you by the sword, you got to understand. You got to understand this now, because now, what doesn't happen when you invert something? Instead of you chasing the enemy chases you. This is what doesn't happen.
Right.
But who is the enemy? It is not European people. It ain't nobody else. It's the dualism of the good and evil, the right and the wrong, the up and the down. That's the enemy.
That's
Dualism is your enemy. And it's been chasing you, But follow with us now. The next verse, it says, verse 8, and 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight, and your enemy shall fall before you by the sword. So what's your sword? What is your sword? We got to understand wholeness. If we don't come under the influence of wholeness, you're going to be chased by the enemy of dualism. Now, I'm a hold right there. Let us have that to sink in, because we're going to break this down, tomorrow when we come back in respect to, how this sword is utilized in order to what? Produce, you understand, the victory. Because we certainly need the victory. We've been in this war, and we have lost over and over and over and over. So with that, family, we're going to say hold this, and again, Thanks everybody for giving their undivided attention and their participation.